Hi, welcome to the Prairie Oaks Pulpit Bible Study. And happy Mother's Day, Mom, and to all the rest of you out there, even if you're not a mom or whatever. If you wish somebody a happy Mother's Day, even if they're not your mom. But here we are, and wanted to take a break from Romans, and we're going to look in the book of Judges. Now, you may be thinking the preacher lost his mind. Judges isn't probably a good spot for a Mother's Day message, but it is. And let me explain. So this week, we had a funeral for a wonderful, godly lady who she never married, never had kids, but a profound example of a good Christian woman. And I think sometimes we undersell that. So wanted to look at someone from the book of Judges who was similar, at least in the regard that they had a very godly response to their situation of being childless, that they would never have children. Because the Bible often celebrates, and rightfully so, when the Lord would provide children for those who couldn't have children. So that sometimes we think that's always what happened. But this one's an instance where, plot twist, it didn't. And so we're going to look in Judges chapter 11. Now, in chapter 10, children of Israel had fallen into their repeat trap. The Lord had rescued them. Then they grow complacent, and then they trade the Lord in for idols. And the Lord is upset with them and hurt, and he allows their enemies to conquer them, and they cry out to the Lord when they're in trouble, and they want his help. And he says, you wanted the idols, why don't you cry out to them to help? Because they know that the idols won't help them. And so they put away their idols, they continue crying out to the Lord, and he has compassion on them, and he's going to send a judge. And then you're going to hear in chapter 11, the judge that he sends has a very interesting story, because he was the eldest, should have been the one to be honored, but his younger siblings did not approve of him. They chased him off, and when they needed help, they went looking for older brother. And he's like, now you want me, now that you need help? Sound familiar? Yeah. They say, we'll let you be the leader of our clan, the leader of our people, if you'll just come rescue us. Because we need someone with experience, and you are the only one that is. And so he goes before the Lord and is declared their judge. The book of Judges. He's the one that's going to lead the children of Israel against their enemies. And the first thing he does is he negotiates. He tries to peaceably bring a resolution to this, but the enemies won't do anything peaceably. They're in it for war. And so musters his troops, and that brings us to, we're just going to pick up in verse 29. In verse 29, and, verse 28. So, however, the king of the people of Ammon, the enemies, did not heed the words which Jephthah sent him. Jephthah being the judge, the leader of the children of Israel. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he passed through Gilead and Manasseh, and passed through Mizpah of Gilead. There's some places there in that part of Israel. And from Mizpah of Gilead, he advanced toward the people of Ammon. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver the people of Ammon into my hands, then it will be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the people of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's. I will offer it up as a burnt offering. So Jephthah advanced towards the people of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hands. And he defeated them from Aror as far as Minnith, 20 cities, and to Abel Keramim, with a very great slaughter. Thus the people of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel. So I paused for a second, should have paused a little sooner, but Jephthah makes this vow to the Lord, and he says, if indeed you provide the victory, then you pick what I will give to you. Be it a burnt offering, you pick. And who did Jephthah think controlled the outcome of the battle? The Lord. Is he right? Yeah, we just read it. The Lord provided the victory. Who did Jephthah think controlled the front doors of his house? The Lord. Well, let's see then on that. Verse 34, when Jephthah came to his house at Mizpah, there was his daughter coming out to meet him with timbrels and dancing, and she was his only child. Besides her, he had neither son nor daughter. And it came to pass when he saw her that he tore his clothes and said, alas, my daughter, you've brought me very low. You're among those who trouble me, for I've given my word to the Lord, and I cannot go back on it. So she said to him, my father, if you've given your word to the Lord, do to me according to what has gone out of your mouth, because the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the people of Ammon. So he comes home and he remembers his vow. And what comes out the door first? His daughter, his only child. And he goes from feeling victorious to utterly defeated. I don't know what Jephthah expected to come out of his house first, whether they usually had to chase cows out of the way or sheep out of the way to come out through the gates. And it is a term for the whole courtyard area of one of their residences. But alas, it's his daughter, his only child, his whole future and everything. And he realizes he promised her to the Lord. And it crushes him. But the reality is, the story's not really about Jephthah. Not today. Not for our telling. We want to turn our attention to Jephthah's daughter. We're not even told her name. It's kind of a shame. But we see here her response. My father, if that's what you said to the Lord, let it be so. Why? The Lord did his part. The Lord answered and delivered victory. You came home peaceably. And the Lord chose. It's me. And so first thing we notice here is, I want to look at my notes here just to make sure I'm getting this right. She's trusted God, and she gave him the praise. He's the one that gave us the victory. We even asked for it, and he made his choice. And in that, she's trusting God's authority. She's trusting that God knows best. Don't know why, but God made this choice. Now, don't go crazy here, but the reality is she knew her dad didn't make the decision. God did. And she trusted God. And you can say a lot of different things about different people in the book of Judges, but she's trusting God in this. Let's see what else takes place here. Verse 37. Then she said to her father, let this thing be done for me. Let me alone for 2 months, that I may go and wander on the mountains and bewail my virginity, my friends and I. And so she asked, just give me time to wrap my head around this and to grieve and to follow through on this. Me and my friends and I. And there's some interesting steps in this that I think are significant. She has time to commit, but she's going to follow through, she says. She's going to grieve. You notice the word bewail there. It's to lament. It's to acknowledge that she's sacrificing something here. And what is she sacrificing? She's specifically referring to she'll never marry. She'll never have children. She was willing to do that for the Lord. And it was things that were completely out of her control. It really wasn't fair, was it? But a lot of our life isn't fair. Other people's decisions do affect us. And so she is going to embrace it. But she's going to embrace it in a way that's full. She isn't going to isolate those emotions. She's going to feel those emotions. And she has friends who will support her in this. Her friends and I. We're going to go in the wilderness where it's just us. No one else can hear. And we're going to bewail. We're going to lament. But then notice, well, what happens next? Verse 38. So he said, go. And he sent her away for 2 months, and she went with her friends and bewailed her virginity on the mountains. And it was so at the end of 2 months that she returned to her father, and he carried out his vow with her, which he had vowed. She knew no man. She returned. She was faithful. She was faithful to God. She just went along with it. Was she a fool? Was she? No, I think she's an example for us here. She willingly sacrificed her future, herself, whatever you see going on in this. She didn't run away. She didn't refuse. She could have done either. She had 2 months to do so. She could have circumvented it, but no. She faithfully followed through. And we're told, as a consequence of that, she knew no man. The Bible's euphemism for she remained a virgin. And it became a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went 4 days each year to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. Now, there's an interesting thing going on here, and that is that the daughters of Israel every year went to, and the word there is not lament. We already know what that word is. It was up there in verse 37. But in the Hebrew, it's an odd word. It's only used twice. But what we do know is it has nothing to do with lamenting. It has a lot to do with honor. It has a lot to do with honor, because the only other place it's used is in the Song of Deborah. That's probably the mother we should have looked at in the book of Judges, although we don't know that she had kids either. But in it, she talks about that those who are rescued will repeat and honor the Lord by telling how he rescued them. That's what that word means there. And so we pause and we say, well, what's going on here? The same thing. They're going to honor and praise what Jephthah's daughter has done for 4 days each year. The women of Israel will honor and repeat what Jephthah's daughter has done. Because what Jephthah's daughter has done is she has stepped into a very exclusive group of people, of those who willingly laid down their lives for their father. There's 3. There is Isaac, who laid down on the altar for Abraham to sacrifice him. And you know how that story ended. God stopped Abraham mid-knife stroke and spared the life of Isaac. And there's so much in that story that points to the future. Second, Jephthah's daughter willingly submitted to her father's vow. Isaac submitted to his father, laid down himself on the altar. Jephthah's daughter willingly submitted to her father's vow. And lastly is the one that everybody's pointing to, Jesus, because he laid down his life completely and fully for the Father's will to be accomplished, our salvation. And so we honor Jesus, not just 4 days a year, but I pray not just every Sunday of the year, but every day honor him with our lives, because he loved us enough to lay down his life for us. And when we willingly sacrifice whatever it is we feel like we're sacrificing, whether it has been something big, or maybe we feel like we've not ever sacrificed, I think we would all agree it's small in comparison to what the Son laid down for the Father when Jesus set aside the glory of heaven to come and live among us, not as a king, but as a servant, and not just to die, but to die on the cross. Therefore God has highly exalted him and given him a name above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord, to the glory of the Father. And so let us honor Jesus. God bless. God keep you. See you next time.